Hey lovelies, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ayo. Thank you for stopping by again, and if this is your first time on this channel, you're definitely welcome. Do well to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so that I get to see more of my content. And in today's tutorial, I'll show you how to make this two-piece shirt and trousers. And without further ado, let's get started. So guys, this is the Ankara print that we're going to use for this tutorial, and this is 6 yards, okay, but I ended up using 4.5 yards, okay. And another material that you're going to need is a plain material that complements the Ankara print, and we are going to use this plain material for the band of the sleeve and also the collar. So right now guys, we are going to be drafting the upper part first, and that is a shirt with a bishop collar, okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and open up the Ankara piece, and in order to fold, I will need the biggest part of my upper body, and in this case it is the hip. So I'm going to divide the hip by 4, and whatever value I get, I'm going to add 2 to that, and that is the amount of fabrics to fold. So here guys, I've gone ahead to cut the piece for the front and also the back. Alright, so here's the back piece, and I'm going to indicate that on the material like so, and right here is the front piece. Alright, you'll notice that the front has an extra allowance. All right, this extra allowance is going to be for our button placket, and the allowance that I added to the front is actually 3 inches. All right, we are going to be folding that later on for our button placket. And for the length of the shirt, I'm using about 29 inches. So go ahead and measure your own desired length. So right now, I'll just go ahead and remove the front piece from the back piece, because we are going to be drafting the back. Then later on, we're going to use it in order to cut the front piece. So right here, I'll just go ahead and start drafting on the back piece. And please note that the back piece is on fold. So right here, I just indicated the start line. And this start line is going to be our shoulder line. Next thing I'll do is just to go ahead and create our neckline. And for this tutorial, I'm going to be using the width of 2.5 and the depth of 1 inch for the back. All right, you can go ahead and use the width of 3 inches, but when I'm making a shirt with collar, I always like to use something smaller, so I'm using 2.5. You can use 3 is also okay. All right, and the next thing to do is to indicate the shoulder measurement, and instead of 7 inches, I'm going to be using 8, because this is a shirt, okay, and we want it to be free, okay. So I'm using 8 inches for the shoulder. And the next thing I'll do is to come down from the shoulder by 1 inch, and I'm going to link that up to the neckline in order to create our shoulder slant. And the next thing I'll do is to go ahead and start marking the vertical lines, and I'll start from the waist. I will indicate the waist line, and up next I will indicate the bust point, and the next thing I'll indicate is the chest line. All right, and I'll just go ahead and square that up. The next thing I'll do is just to go ahead and indicate my desired shirt length. So right here we have the bust point, we have the waist line, and here is the shirt length, and this allowance that we have under here is going to be for the folding allowance. And the next thing to do is to go ahead and start marking the body measurement starting from the bust. All right, I'm going to divide the bust by 4, and I'm going to add 1 inch for his allowance and 1 inch for seam allowance. All right, so here I'm going to jump the waistline and come to the hip line here, and I'm going to divide the hip by 4. Then I'm going to add 1 inch his allowance and 1 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to measure what I have here on the hip area, and I'm going to minus 1.5 from there. You can minus 1, and I'm going to put whatever value I get on the waist area. All right, I'm not using my actual waist measurement because I want the shirt to be free, okay. And the next thing to do is just to go ahead and connect the points together. And right now I'll go ahead and create the armhole. All right, so I'll just go ahead and find the midpoint, then I will indicate that there, then I'll use my pattern master to go ahead and create the armhole curve. And up next, I'll just go ahead and cut out the pattern. And right now guys, I'm going to be placing the back piece on the front piece, and we are going to use the back pattern to cut the front pattern. And right here guys, this part is going to be for the bottom placket, all right? And right from the center front, I place the back piece on the front piece, okay? And the next thing we are going to do is just to go ahead and retrace what we have on the back piece. And so right now we have our back piece here, and this right here is the front piece. And the next thing to do is just to go ahead and create the front neckline. So I'm just going to place my tape rule here, and I'm going to come down by 2.5 inches, okay? I'm going to indicate with a straight line like so. Then I'm going to square it towards that area, and I'm going to create a round shape. Then I'm going to cut out. And right now I'll just go ahead and unfold the bottom placket, and our neckline would have this funny looking shape, but that's not a problem at all. So what I would do next is just to trace shape a little bit out of the neckline. You can leave it as it is until you fold your bottom placket, okay? Then you shape it out. And the next thing to do is to come to the armhole here, and because the front armhole is always deeper than the back, I'm going to shape it a little bit and trace a little bit out of the armhole, okay, in order to avoid armhole bulge on the front piece, okay? So I'm just going to go ahead and shape this out. So right here we have both of our piece, and the next thing I'll do is just to go ahead and notch the bottom placket allowance. And right now guys, the next thing to do is to go ahead and cut our trouser pattern, okay? And here I have 2 pieces for the front piece, okay? And in order to know the amount of fabrics to cut for the front piece, I divided my hip by 4, and I added 4 inches extra to that. And the next thing to do is to go ahead and indicate the length of this trouser, and for this tutorial it is 43 inches. And what is left of this Ankara print after the trouser length is what we are going to use as folding allowance. And in order to start drafting the pattern for the trouser, I'll come to the top here, and I'm going to indicate the start line. And up next, we are going to need to indicate our hip line, our crotch length, and also our thigh line. And for the hip line, I'm using 9 inches. So I'll just go ahead now and indicate with a straight line. And for the crotch length, I'll just go ahead and divide my hip by 4. And I'm going to add 1.5 to that, okay? Or you just sit on a hard surface, then you measure your crotch length. And the hip circumference in this case is actually 42 divided by 4 would give us 10.5 plus 1.5, that will give us 12. All right, so my crotch length here is 12, and I'll just go ahead and indicate that here. And for the thigh line, it's most time 2 inches to 2.5 inches after the crotch length. All right, so I'm just going to come down by 2.5 inches to get my thigh line. And the next thing to do is to come to the hip line here, and you are going to divide your hip by 4, and you are going to add 1 inch joining allowance to that, okay? And whatever you have on the hip line, you are going to duplicate on the crotch line. All right, so I'll just go ahead and put the same thing that I have on the hip line on the crotch line here, and I'll connect it together on the straight line, and I'll just go ahead and come to the waist line here, and whatever I have on the hip line is what I'm going to also duplicate here. Then I'll connect together on a straight line. And the next thing to do, guys, is to get our crotch extension. And in order to do this, what I usually do is to come to the hip area here, and whatever I have on the hip area here, I'm going to divide by 2 using my tape measure, and I'll divide it by 2 again. And whatever value I get is what I use for my crotch extension, okay? So what I did was to come to this part here, and I divided it by 2, then I divided it by 2 again, and that is how I got my crotch extension. Or another way to do this is to go ahead and divide your hip by 16. All right, and after doing that, I'll just go ahead and create the crotch curve. And the next thing to do is to go ahead and find the center of this pattern, which is called the grain line. And in order to do this, you're going to measure what you have on your crotch line, okay? And whatever you have there, you're going to divide by 2. I have 14.5 here, so I divided it by 2 to find the grain line, and I just indicated it there. And I will go ahead and indicate it on the tie line also, all right? Then I'll connect on the straight line. And the next thing to do is to get your tie circumference. So measure around your tie, and whatever you have there, you're going to divide by 2. In this case, we have 26, and divided by 2, that is going to give us 13. So I'm going to share that 13 on an equal proportion, all right, using the grain line, all right? So all you need to do is to make sure that half of 13 is on one side and the rest of the other 13 is on the other side, okay? In that case, I'm going to put 6.5 here, and on the other side, we are going to have 6.5 also, making 13 inches, all right? That is shared equally. So right now, I'll just go ahead and connect the crotch extension to the tie line here, and from this hip line, I'm just going to go ahead and connect to this point that we mark here. And right here on the tie, I'll just go ahead and mark it on a straight line to the hem of the trouser, okay? So the next thing to do is to measure what you have on the tie line, and you are going to duplicate it on the hem of the trouser. And right now, we are just going to go ahead and connect this point to the point that we just marked. And right now, I'll come to the waist area, and I'm going to input 1/4 of my waist circumference, and I'm going to add 1 inch for joining allowance and 1/2 inch for ease allowance. And if you are going to be adding that to your trouser, you are also going to add 1 inch for dart allowance, but this is going to be a dartless trouser, so I'm not going to be adding dart allowance. So here I'm just going to go ahead and connect the waist to the hip area, okay? And the next thing I'll do is to come to this part, and I'll come down by 1/2 inch. You can actually do 1 inch, but I used 1/2 inch, and I'll just connect it to this part. And the next thing to do is to go ahead and cut out the pattern. And after cutting out the trouser pattern, the next thing I'll do is to come to the waist area, and I'm going to be cutting 1 inch off the waist, okay? Because we are going to be adding a band to the trouser later on. So I'll just mark 1 inch and I'll cut it off. So in order to cut the back pattern, I have these fabrics here, and I've placed the front pattern on the fabrics, okay? And as you can see, there is excess along this side that has the crotch extension, about 5 inches to 4 inches extra, all right, on the back pattern. And on the side here, I'm not going to be adding any allowance, but there is allowance on the side that has the crotch extension. So in order to modify the back piece, I'm going to come to the waist area here, and I'm going to come outward by 2 inches, and on the hip area also, I'm going to come outward by 2 inches, okay? And so I'm going to come to this crotch area here, and I'm going to extend the line like so, and I'm going to repeat the same thing to the hip and the waist area. So I'll come to this crotch extension here, and I'm going to extend it by the same crotch extension that I use for the front, okay? You can use 2.5 inches on a standard, or you use 2 inches for somebody that is on a smaller size, okay? So the next thing I'm going to do is just to connect the points together. And the next thing I'll do is to come here and come up by 2 inches, all right? And I'm going to connect it upward like so. All right, this is the back extension to allow the butt to sit in well. All right, and the next thing to do is just to connect this point to this point like so. Thing I'll do is just to come to the tie line here, and I'm going to extend it by 1.5 inches, and I'm going to connect it to the crotch extension. Then I'll just go down by 1 inch all the way to the hem of the trouser. Then I'll connect it as I go. So add 1 inch to the other part, but on the tie line I added 1.5 inches, but on the other part I added 1 inch all the way to the hem like so. And the next thing to do is actually to go ahead now and cut out our pattern. And after cutting, this is what our pattern is looking like. This is the front piece, and here we have the back piece. All right, and in order to cut the sleeve, I have the fabrics folded already here, and I'll be cutting both sleeve at once. So first I'm going to go ahead and mark the start line, and after indicating the start line, I'm going to indicate the cap height of 4.5. So 4 inches to 4.5 inches is most times very okay for most sizes. Okay, so I came down by 4.5 inches to indicate the cap height. Okay, and the next thing to do is to divide your armhole by 2. All right, and in this case for me it is 8.5. So I'm going to go ahead now and indicate 8.5, and that is my armhole divided by 2. And right now I'll just go ahead and connect together like this. And right now on this slant line, I'm going to find the midpoint. Okay, so I'll measure it, and I'll use my tape rule to divide it into 2 in order to find the center, right? And I'll just indicate that here. And right from this place, I'm just going to create a curve around that, and here I'll create another curve, creating an inverted S kind of shape. Okay, and the next thing to do is just to go ahead and add allowance to the sleeve. Okay, and right from here on the bicep here, I'm going to add 2 inches allowance there. So the next thing I'll do is to indicate the elbow line. All right, and on the hem of the sleeve, that is where the wrist is going to be. So you are going to go ahead and measure what you have on your wrist circumference. All right, and whatever you have there, I have 9 here. I'm going to add 3 inches to that, or 4 inches if you like. And if you add 3 inches to what we have here, it's going to give us 12 inches. All right, so I'm going to be using 12 inches for my elbow circumference, and divided by 2, that gave me 6. And I added 1 inch sewing allowance to that, and I'm going to connect the point together. As you can see, I ignored the elbow line. All right, so I just connected it directly from the bicep, and I'm just going to go ahead now and cut out the pattern. And the next thing to do after cutting the sleeve is to go ahead and cut the band. The height of this band is actually 2 inches, and the wideness of it is my wrist circumference divided by 2 plus 1 inch. And as you can see right here, I've gone ahead to iron stay on the band. So guys, this is where this tutorial ends today. Make sure to turn on your notification bell so that you get to see the concluding part. And if you are yet to subscribe to this channel, do well to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.